Welcome to Bookpods. Today we're taking a really brisk, high-energy exploration into a framework that completely flips the script on how we think about money, leverage, and time.
Yeah, it really challenges that standard advice we all get.
It does. We're unpacking MJ DeMarco's best-selling book, The Millionaire Fastlane, and the mission for this deep dive is to uncover the actual architecture of building wealth quickly. And I want to clarify right out of the gate here. We mean quickly, not easily.
Right, that's a huge distinction.
Exactly. We are looking at how to escape that deeply ingrained, work 40 years, save 10%, and maybe retire when you're 65 mindset.
And to help decode this rather aggressive framework, we're drawing on 3 really detailed video summaries from some prominent creators.
Yep.
We've got Little Bit Better, The Swedish Investor, and Ali Abdaal.
Awesome sources.
Yeah, they've thoroughly analyzed DeMarco's concepts, so we're going to synthesize their insights to figure out what actually separates people who generate massive wealth in their 30s from those who just grind away until traditional retirement.
I want to start with a thought experiment for you, the listener. Imagine you're taking a cross-country trip, and you have 3 choices for how to get there. Option 1, you can walk completely blind without a map. Option 2, you can drive a slow, sputtering tractor. Or option 3, you can pilot a Formula One car with a top speed of over 230 miles per hour.
I think everyone wants the keys to the Formula One car.
Right, obviously.
Yeah.
But the question is, why do so many of us willingly choose the tractor?
The sources actually address that exact question by looking at a foundational parable from the book. It's about the Egyptian pyramids.
Oh, right, the 2 nephews.
Exactly. So a pharaoh commands his 2 18-year-old nephews, Azur and Chuma, to each build a massive pyramid. The first one to finish wins unimaginable riches and early retirement.
High stakes.
Very. And Azur takes the approach most of society would applaud. He just immediately gets to work dragging heavy stones out in the blazing sun. He even hires a personal trainer to build bigger muscles so you can lift heavier stones. I mean, he is the epitome of hard work.
Which is the classic brute force method.
Yeah.
He's just trading his physical energy and his time directly for progress. But Chuma takes a completely different route.
He does. For 3 whole years, Chuma doesn't move a single stone. Azur actually mocks him because Chuma is just sitting in his barn tinkering.
Just tinkering away while Azur is sweating.
Right, but what Chuma is actually doing is building a complex system of ropes, wheels, and levers. When he finally rolls this machine out, he completes his pyramid's foundation in a week.
Wow.
Yeah, something that took Azur an entire year. Chuma finishes his whole pyramid in 8 years and retires a king. Azur, meanwhile, stubbornly refuses to abandon his brute force method and literally works himself into an early grave. He suffers a massive heart attack before his pyramid is even finished.
That story really just perfectly highlights the difference between working hard and working with leverage. If we map that onto our current economic reality, Azur and Chuma represent the distinct financial roadmaps that people follow.
Yeah, the book categorizes these roadmaps into 3 distinct paths. The first is the sidewalk. This is the walking blind without a map option. The sidewalk is governed entirely by instant gratification, and its wealth equation is simply income plus debt.
So we're not necessarily just talking about low-income earners here.
Not at all.
Like this could easily be a corporate lawyer making $250,000 a year but spending $280,000 to keep up appearances. Buying the Armani suits on credit, taking extravagant vacations, all because society equates looking wealthy with actually being wealthy.
That is the defining trap of the sidewalk. You're always one minor emergency like a medical bill or a layoff away from total financial collapse.
Right.
The second road is where most responsible people find themselves, and that's the slow lane. This is Azur dragging the stones.
The tractor.
Exactly the tractor. It's the path we're all traditionally taught. Get good grades, secure a safe job, invest in a low-cost index fund, clipped coupons, and rely on compound interest so you can retire a millionaire at 65. The equation here is Job plus market investments.
But if you look at the underlying math of that Slowlane equation, it reveals a massive vulnerability. It relies almost entirely on the passage of time.
Time is the great restrictor in the slow lane. Your income is tethered to a fixed hourly wage or an annual salary. The intrinsic value of your work might increase slightly with promotions, but your leverage is capped because there are only 24 hours in a day.
Right, you can only pedal so fast.
If you are riding a tricycle that maxes out at 3 miles per hour, pedaling harder won't magically get you across the country in a day. Compound interest is a powerful force, but it requires decades of heavy lifting.
Which brings us to the core issue with the slow lane, the 5-for-2 trade-off. We are conditioned to accept that trading 5 days of our week, giving up the absolute best hours of our day to a job we often just tolerate, is a fair exchange for 2 days of freedom on the weekend.
It's a terrible deal.
If someone offered you $5 today on the promise of giving you $2 back tomorrow, you would laugh in their face. Yet we accept this exact transaction with our time.
The Fastlane, which is the Chuma approach, flips that paradigm entirely. The wealth equation in the Fastlane shifts to profit plus asset value. It completely detaches your income from the time you spend.
So you aren't getting paid for your hours.
Right, you are getting paid for the value you create and the systems you build. Fastlaners are willing to trade 7 days of grueling, intense work for a few years, sacrificing their weekends entirely so they can eventually enjoy 7 days of freedom a week for the rest of their lives.
But jumping into that fast lane requires a fundamental rewiring of how you interact with the economy. You have to transition from a consumer mindset to a producer mindset.
The sources highlight a brilliant anecdote about this from Ali Abdal. He describes walking into a high-end Samsung retail store. A consumer walks into that environment and their brain immediately goes to acquisition.
Like, look at the screen resolution on that phone. I want that smartwatch.
Exactly. I need to upgrade my television.
While the producer walks into the exact same room and views it through the lens of systematic analysis. They're looking at the unit economics and the marketing psychology. Why is the lighting designed this way? How much is the lease on this prime retail space? What's the profit margin on the accessories placed right next to the register?
It changes your entire filter for reality. Instead of digging for gold, you analyze the supply chain of the shovels. Instead of mindlessly consuming hours of YouTube, you deconstruct the pacing, the thumbnail design, the retention tactics to understand how attention is captured and monetized.
Let me play devil's advocate for a moment, though. When people hear the term fast lane and we talk about building wealth quickly, it sounds dangerously close to the scammy internet gurus promising overnight millions. How does the framework separate genuine rapid wealth creation from a get-rich-quick illusion?
The media actually plays a massive role in confusing the two. They portray wealth as an event. Consider the founder of Glaceau Vitamin Water, who is mentioned in the sources. He sold his company to Coca-Cola for $4.1 billion.
A huge payout.
Right. And the media plastered that everywhere. That was the event. What they completely ignored was the grueling 11-year process of late nights, crushing stress, supply chain failures, and near bankruptcies that made that event possible.
The process behind the event.
Exactly. The fast lane requires a rigorous process. One of the sources warns listeners about those $2,000 courses promising millions for 40 minutes of work a day. Get rich quick is a real mathematical possibility, provided your definition of quick is around 10 years of relentless effort. But get rich easy. That is an absolute scam designed to separate sidewalkers from their money.
That distinction highlights the gap between having an interest in business and having a commitment to it. Interest is reading a book about entrepreneurship and tweaking a side hustle for an hour on a Tuesday. Commitment is pushing past your 100th failure, analyzing the data, and adapting the system on a Sunday night when everyone else is relaxing.
If you possess that level of commitment and you've adopted the producer mindset, you need to actually construct the vehicle. MJ DeMarco introduces a framework called the 5 Commandments of a Fast Lane Business, remembered by the acronym CENTS.
C-E-N-T-S.
Right. If your business model fails to check these 5 boxes, you risk building a fragile income stream, or worse, just creating another exhausting job for yourself.
Let's test the architecture of these commandments, starting with C for control. This seems to be about whether you are the driver of the vehicle or just a hitchhiker. But in today's digital economy, doesn't everyone rely on third-party platforms to some degree?
They do, but there's a difference between utilizing a platform for distribution and letting a platform own your business. The author shares a story of an affiliate marketer who was generating $20,000 a month.
Which is incredible money.
By all conventional standards, yes. But the author, who owned the actual platform that affiliate was using, was making $200,000 a month. And more importantly, the author held all the leverage.
Right.
A single algorithm update, a change in terms of service, or a suspended account could wipe out the affiliate's income overnight. True Fastlane wealth requires owning the system and controlling the asset.
That ties perfectly into the second commandment, E for entry. It dictates that the barrier to entry for your business must be high. If I can start an online drop shipping store in 2 hours with $50, what's stopping a million other people from doing the exact same thing by tomorrow morning?
Nothing. And that results in a massive market traffic jam. Years ago, starting a blog could easily generate six figures because the technical barrier to entry was high enough to keep the masses out.
But today, the saturation is just immense.
Exactly. You want a business that requires specialized skills, significant capital, complex problem solving, or a steep learning curve. The difficulty of starting the business is the very moat that protects your future profits.
Which brings us to N for need. I imagine this commandment is where a lot of traditional career advice falls apart. We are constantly told to follow your passion or do what you love, and the money will follow.
The sources present a harsh reality check on that advice through the story of a guy named Joe. Joe is incredibly passionate about martial arts. He follows the cliche advice and opens a martial arts studio in his neighborhood, assuming his passion will translate into business success.
Let me guess how that went.
10 months later, he's bankrupt and the studio is closed. The fatal flaw was that he opened the business based on his own selfish desires. He never bothered to check if the neighborhood actually needed or wanted a martial arts studio.
Right, the market doesn't care about what you like to do.
The market is entirely agnostic to your passions. It only cares about the value you provide and the problems you solve for consumers.
So even if you have control, a high barrier to entry, and you solve a genuine market need, you can still fail if you don't master the fourth commandment. T for time. You have to be able to detach your revenue from your physical presence.
The sources illustrate this trap with the story of Ashlyn. She loved literature and coffee, so she opened a quaint artisan coffee shop. Initially, it felt like a dream realized. But very quickly, the reality of the business model sets in.
She has to actually run it.
Right. She's waking up at 4 a.m. to prep, staying until 8 p.m. to close, constantly covering shifts for flaky employees. Her social life just evaporates. She eventually closes the shop after 3 years.
And it wasn't even about the money, was it?
No, the shop was slightly profitable, but she failed the commandment of time. She didn't build a self-sustaining asset. She just built herself an all-consuming job with terrible hours.
If the goal is to build an asset that scales beyond your own time, that leads us to the final and perhaps most powerful commandment. S for scale, which the book refers to as the law of affection.
The law of affection dictates that to make millions, you must impact millions. This can be achieved through two levers, magnitude or scale. Magnitude is about providing a profound amount of value or solving a highly complex problem for a smaller number of people.
Like a specialized surgeon.
Exactly. A top-tier commercial real estate developer or a Hollywood plastic surgeon operates with high magnitude. They might only serve a few clients, but the massive value of the transaction creates wealth.
And scale is the other side of that lever. It's providing a smaller amount of unit value, but distributing it to a massive audience. If an influencer formulates a new beauty product and makes a $3 profit per unit, that isn't much magnitude. But if they leverage e-commerce to sell 1 million units globally, they achieve massive wealth through scale.
And if you can manage to combine both high magnitude and massive scale, you enter the Billionaire Fastlane. That's where you find innovators who change global paradigms, fundamentally altering how millions of people live and work.
So we have the theoretical map with the sense framework, but theory only goes so far. The sources detail specific vehicles that DeMarco calls money trees. These are the actual, tangible systems that survive on their own and replace the traditional time for money trade.
The framework identifies 5 primary money trees. The first, and arguably the most potent in the modern era, is computer or software systems. Software is the ultimate fast-lane vehicle because the marginal cost of replication is practically zero.
The sources highlight a great example of an iPhone developer here. He was working a demanding day job, so he had to build his application late at night. The friction was immense. He was literally coding with one hand while holding his infant child in the other arm.
Talk about commitment.
Yeah, he pushed through that friction, launched a single game, and generated $600,000 in a single month. Because once that code is written, whether it's downloaded by 10 users or 10 million users, it requires no additional physical labor from him.
The second money tree is distribution. This involves building platforms that connect buyers and sellers or scaling an existing model across a wider network.
AppSumo is a perfect example of this. They act as the middleman, aggregating software deals and distributing them to a massive audience of entrepreneurs. Amazon is obviously the apex predator of distribution systems. But it doesn't have to be purely digital.
Right, franchising is a great physical example.
If you build a highly profitable local sandwich shop, you don't just stay local and work the register. You build a distribution system by franchising the operational model to 500 different locations. You scale the system. not your own labor.
The third system is content. This is where your specialized knowledge or creativity becomes an asset. Books, comprehensive YouTube channels, and online courses fall into this category.
Ali Abdal uses his own business as a case study here. He spent significant time researching, filming, and editing a Skillshare class on how to study effectively for exams. That required a heavy upfront investment of his time. But once it was published, it became a durable asset.
And it pays off continuously.
It generates around $10,000 a month in passive income. Now, content does have a decay rate. You might have to update it or market it occasionally to keep it relevant, but the heavy lifting is completely decoupled from the ongoing revenue.
The fourth money tree is human resources. This means building an organization and a team to run the operations for you. It's widely considered the most difficult system to manage because human beings are complex.
The friction here is largely psychological for the founder, isn't it? Moving from, I can do this task better than anyone else, to, I need to build a training system so someone else can do this task at 80% capacity.
Precisely. It requires a complete shift from managing tasks to managing people and culture. But if you can master the friction of delegation and build a reliable human resource system, it's what ultimately allows a founder to step away from the daily operational grind while the business continues to expand.
Finally, the fifth money tree is rental systems. The most traditional example is physical real estate, buying an apartment building and collecting rent. But the digital economy has expanded this concept significantly.
It absolutely has. Rental systems now include digital real estate, licensing agreements, and royalties. A photographer can upload a portfolio of images to a stock photography site and earn a royalty every single time an image is downloaded by a designer halfway across the world.
Build it once, rent it forever.
One creator mentioned in the sources actually generated $9,000 in a single week just by designing and licensing a premium set of digital icons. They built the asset once and rented its utility indefinitely.
When you look at those 5 money trees: software, distribution, content, human resources, and rental, the question for you to consider is what seed you could plant this weekend. What specific skills or knowledge do you currently possess that could be transitioned from a consumer activity into a producer asset?
Synthesizing everything we've explored today, the overarching message is that wealth requires a radical paradigm shift in how you view leverage. The Sidewalk is a mathematical guarantee of financial anxiety. The Slowlane offers safety, but it demands the best decades of your life in exchange.
The Fastlane is the only roadmap predisposed toward rapid wealth creation.
But it demands that you upgrade your mindset to that of a producer, that you ignore the media's obsession with overnight success, and that you embrace the grueling process of system building. And fundamentally, whatever vehicle you choose to build, it must rigorously obey those sense commandments: control, entry, need, time, and scale.
It provides a very clear, uncompromising lens through which to evaluate any business idea. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to ponder. We spent a lot of time discussing the commandment of entry, how business models with low barriers to entry get saturated and turn into traffic jams.
Right.
Well, as artificial intelligence and automation continue to advance at a breakneck pace, they're dramatically lowering the barrier to entry for creating both software and content. Almost anyone can generate functional code or write an acceptable blog post with AI right now. So as the digital forest gets more and more crowded with low-effort content and software, how will you rely on the commandments of magnitude and control to ensure your specific money tree doesn't just get completely lost in the noise?
That is going to be the defining challenge for the next generation of Fastlane entrepreneurs.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of wealth today. Keep analyzing those systems, stay completely committed to the process, and we will catch you next time.